أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu to our viewers and listeners. This is study number 22 of the Ramadan Daily Quran Studies of the year 2020. I am Zahid Aziz and I'm delivering it for the MV Anjuman Ishat Islam Lahore, UK. We are beginning today a new topic which will run over a number of the following studies, and this is known as the doctrine of abrogation or naskh in the Quran. And sometimes I must apologize for this, that some of these points might not be so easy to understand, but I'll try to simplify them as far as possible. As we have seen, the Quran in chapter 2 had been describing how the Israelites, the Bani Israel, the followers of the law of Moses, had forgotten the true spirit and the real fundamentals of that law. Then Jesus had come to make the same point to them, that they had forgotten the true spirit, and he came to reform them. But his followers also later on developed other doctrines and beliefs in conflict with what he had actually taught. So when the Holy Quran came into the world, it came not only to revive those forgotten original fundamentals, as we've already been mentioning, but it also came to broaden their application. So, for example, in the Bible, we read repeatedly about God being the Lord God of Israel, the God of a particular nation. But the Holy Quran presents God as being Rabbul Alameen, Lord of all the worlds, Rabbun Nas, Lord of the entire mankind. So that is an example of where the Holy Quran has broadened the application of the original fundamentals taught to the Israelites through the revelation which came to them. So then, referring to why a new revelation in the form of the Quran was needed, when there were already earlier revelations and books of Allah, regarding why that was, the Quran says, Ma nansakh min ayatin aw nunsiha nate bi khairin minha aw misliha alam ta'lam anna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir, which translates as, whatever message we abrogate or cause to be forgotten, we bring one better than it or one like it. Do you not know that Allah is powerful over all things? Verse 106 of chapter 2. Now the message it refers to here, whatever message we abrogate, are the revelations brought by previous prophets. The word used for message here is ayat. Ma nansakh min ayatin aw nunsiha. And the word ayat, as you know, is commonly used to mean a verse of the Quran. And this somehow led to the development of the wrong idea that some verses of the Quran itself, which were revealed earlier in the Quran, were abrogated by other verses revealed later on. So the word message here, whatever message we abrogate or cause to be forgotten, that was taken wrongly by some to mean a verse of the Quran. Now in Hadith, there are reports of companions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Sahaba, radiyallahu anhum, discussing whether certain verses were abrogated by others. And what you read there is that one companion expresses one opinion about a verse, and another companion contradicts him. And from there, as time passed, this idea of abrogation of verses of the Quran by other verses, known as naskh, it became established among Muslims. And the verse, the later verse, which is said to abrogate another verse, that verse is called nasikh, the one which abrogates a previous verse. And the verse which it abrogates, the earlier verse, is called mansukh. So this belief is also known as nasakh mansukh, apart from being known as naskh. Now I'll illustrate the almost universal acceptance of this theory of naskh among Muslim scholars, which they accepted without examining it in any deep way. There's a widely studied book in English published in 1981 called Ulumul Quran, an introduction to the sciences of the Quran by a German Muslim convert, Ahmad von Denfer. And the author writes about his book that this book is a descriptive account of the traditional subject of Ulumul Quran. That subject is how you study the Quran. And he writes that his book presents the generally accepted views on the issues. So I've chosen his book as an illustration of the generally accepted views. His book on how to study the Quran has a whole section on this belief in abrogation. And he writes in that chapter that knowledge regarding which verses abrogate which others is one of the important preconditions for explaining the meanings of the Quran and for understanding and applying Islamic law. And this subject of abrogation was traditionally taught as part of Quranic studies in the traditional Muslim theological schools and colleges. In Quranic studies, they taught this theory or belief in abrogation, which is why the respected Mr. von Denfer has covered it in his very useful book. Now, this theory of, I'll give you here an example of how it was applied. It was even applied to the verses relating to fasting. And it was applied to verse 184 of chapter 2, which was considered, or a part of it was considered abrogated by 184 itself or by verse 185. Now, verse 184 says, "But whoever among you is sick or on a journey, he shall fast a like number of other days." In other words, the days he has missed. "And those who find it extremely hard may effect redemption by feeding a poor one. And that you fast is better for you if you know." So that 184 has these words, "and those who find it extremely hard may effect redemption by feeding a poor one." The next verse, 185, mentioning the month of Ramadan, also says, "So whoever of you is present in the month of Ramadan, he shall fast in it, and whoever is sick or on a journey, he shall fast a like number of other days." In Sahih Bukhari, the view is expressed by Hazrat Ibn Umar, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that in verse 184, the words, "and those who find it extremely hard may effect redemption by feeding a poor one," are abrogated. And why are they abrogated? These words have other meanings or translations as well. And some translations you will find, if you look up translations of the Quran, where it says, or where we have those who are those who find it extremely hard, wa alallazina yatikunahu, they take these to mean those who are able to, those who have the power to, and then they either say they mean those who are able to fast or those who are able to pay the redemption. Different commentators take it in one of these two different ways. But to simplify it, it is thought that originally a choice was offered. A choice was offered in regard to fasting. Some say the choice was only offered to the sick and the traveler. Others say the choice was offered to everyone. The choice was offered to everyone that they may fast if they wish, or they may pay redemption instead. And of course, it is then argued that this choice was abrogated because you had to fast. If you want to look up modern English translations of the Quran, then in the translations by Muhammad Asad, Marmaduke Picatal, Taqi Usmani, and Maulana Maududi, these words, those who find it extremely hard, are translated either as those who are able to fast or those who are able to pay the redemption. But you see, again in Sahih Bukhari, after the opinion given by Ibn Umar that these words of verse 184 are abrogated, we find the renowned companion Hazrat Ibn Abbas Raziyallahu ta'ala anhu saying that these words, and those who find it extremely hard may effect redemption by feeding a poor one, are not abrogated. He explains, which is the position held by us, that this refers to those who are sick or on a journey during Ramadan, but would find it extremely hard even after Ramadan to make up their missed fasts. That is to say, for example, old men, old women, and some others as well, of course, who would find it extremely hard even after Ramadan, and that they may effect redemption by feeding a poor one. That is, in our view, the right interpretation. No choice was ever offered to those who could fast. That if you like, you can fast, and if you're able to pay redemption, you can do that. This choice was not offered to everyone generally. And it also wasn't offered to the sick and the traveler in making up the fasts if they could fast afterwards. If they can fast afterwards, unless they find it hard, there was no choice ever offered. That you can say that first a choice was offered in verse 184 and then it was taken away in 185. And what we see in Sahih Bukhari is that in hadith number 4505, Ibn Abbas says these words are not abrogated. And in the very next hadith, number 4506, Ibn Umar says that the same words are abrogated. So here is a contradiction between the two of them. And if you look at those who believe that these words were abrogated, they actually give different explanations of how this choice came to be abrogated, the alleged choice offered in verse 184. Ibn Umar, who believes in the abrogation of those words of 184, says that this choice was abrogated by verse 185. And there's another view given in Bukhari that the last words of verse 184 itself, the last words, which I did read above, and that you fast is better for you if you know, that they abrogate the choice. So even those who believe, first of all, there's a difference between one companion saying this is not abrogated and another saying this is abrogated. Then among those who say this is abrogated, they can't agree on which words abrogate it. And in fact, one says that the last words of verse 184 abrogate words which came in the middle of verse 184. So surprising though this may seem to you, these are actually facts. So what I've given here is an example of the fact that there is no agreement among Muslim scholars who believe in abrogation. I'm talking about those. There is no agreement among them as to which words or verses are abrogated and which words or verses have abrogated them. So I'm sorry if this sounded complicated. I'd like to tell you that I had a hard enough time trying to work out what they actually meant by those words of verse 184 being abrogated. I had enough of a hard time, let alone you. So that brings to an end study 22. Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Qur'anil Azim wa nafa'na wa iyyakum bil ayati wal zikril hakim innahu ta'ala jawadun karimun malikun barur raufur rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.